the international germplasm banks are an insurance policy for agricultural development for today and into the future. Just as crops depend on humanity or farmers to reproduce themselves, humanity equally depends on crops to nourish itself and to feed its population.
What we do now with Genebanks in the world is we preserve all this diversity, and it's preserved for use.
To enable agriculture to remain sustainable into the future. Our collections hold these materials for humanity.
Essentially in trust for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, so they're not ours. They belong to the people of the world.
To be used by anyone who's involved in crop improvement, whether that be a breeding company or a national program, or even by farmers or by local breeders.
That's our mandate. We don't want to just collect and just sit on it. We're not a museum. When the trust was first formed, its goal was to be able to support these gene banks the way they needed to be supported so that we didn't lose this valuable resource.
It's quite difficult to justify keeping gene banks to normal donors.
To conserve plant genetic resources or varieties requires a very long time horizon.
This is where I think our major challenge is from a funding standpoint.
Normal donors want to demonstrate an impact on the farmer within a couple of years, and gene banks are looking at a much more long-term future.
How do we explain to someone how important it is to have this particular accession versus this one? Why do you need two? Why don't you just keep one?
The use of genetic diversity is really quite complicated because it has to address the current needs of farmers and consumers and researchers, but it also has to anticipate the needs.
You need the entire suite of diversity available in order for us to sustain food productivity in the world and to overcome hunger.
A number of different varieties of wheat that we have in the global collection exceeds 800,000.
There were over 180 species of potato.
The gene bank at Erie became the largest collection of rice in the world. It's now got about 120,000 accessions in it.
Researchers are now just beginning to understand what that represents, what kind of diversity that represents, and whether that diversity is going to be adequate for the future needs. The Global Crop Diversity Trust was established to provide this type of long-term funding.
To keep feeding the world and keeping the world healthy. And I think that's one area where the CG and the Trust are working very closely together with the similar goals so that we will, in the future, be able to continue to feed everyone in the world.
Too often the collections are perceived to be museums of dead varieties. And so what we need to do is to grow the materials out, to make sure that the seeds remain alive and viable, to ensure that the material is available to anyone who wants it. Farmers don't know what the next season holds for them. They're planting it based on a lot of faith that the coming growing season will be a favorable season for the crop. But they don't really know. Genetic diversity enables the crop to be prepared for all of these uncertainties.
Everything is always changing, and that's what the gene banks are there for, to help us change.
What we want is this material that we all have to work with today, the genetic diversity, to be available for our great-great-grandchildren.
Any problem that comes along, you come to a gene bank and the gene bank can help you solve the problem. To me, that's the big excitement.